Hi, entrepreneurship students. This is Mrs. Richardson coming to you with your week 8 of continuous learning. I hope the past weeks have been feasible for you to complete your work and that you're getting your grade in the best position possible for this very last week of continuous learning. And so with that, there's a couple of things that you need to know. This last week, typically this would be when we would do a performance-based final. I might have a couple of questions that you have to answer on paper, but for the most part, it typically is a performance-based final where you get to show me your skills of recreating designs in Adobe Illustrator and then follow that up with actually showing me what you would do to press an item and get it prepared for delivery and kind of walk through the whole process of the t-shirt shop. Since we are not together and not able to do a performance final to this magnitude, I have chosen with our situation to just go ahead and keep things as simple as possible. And so your 2 assignments that you've been doing week in and week out with your Fred Factor prompt followed by your choice board option, we're just going to continue that into this week. The only difference will be that those 2 assignments will combine to be counted as your final grade or for this final exam. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll answer whatever I possibly can. Please do know that this continuous learning time does count. I know you guys were probably told by other teachers or through the grapevine or whatever it may be that if you were passing prior to continuous learning that you will pass this class. And that is true. But your grade can continue to go down if you're not doing assignments. So if you get zeros in assignments, it can go down all the way to a D potentially, which may not be a big deal for a particular class, but overall it could harm your GPA and cause some problems for future decisions that maybe you want to make about school and things like that in the future. So I urge you to really think about your choices that you're making today and the effects that they could have tomorrow, and that hopefully you'll take this opportunity to complete your assignments. If there are any past assignments from continuous learning that you would like to go back and get credit for, please do those, but let me know so that way I can go ahead and get those grades updated. And you have until May 22nd to get those grades in. So please, make sure you're doing everything that you can within your power to get your grade in the best position possible. And as far as this week, again, you're going to go into Schoology. There'll be 2 assignments. The first one will be your Fred Factor chapter prompt response, and then your second one will be your choice board option that you choose. So those will be the 2 assignments, and those will count as your final. We're here in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Fred Factor. So just as a reminder, here's Fred Factor by Mark Sanborn, and we are in our last chapter today, chapter 13. So let's get started. Okay, so as we jump into this last chapter of the Fred Factor today, I do want to highlight that there is a portion of it where they talk about the historical figure of Jesus Christ. And so if that's something that offends you, all I want you to think about in this regard is that this is a historical person. He did live on the earth. How he's thought of beyond that is up to you and your own interpretation. Obviously, I have my own personal values and beliefs in that, and you probably do too. So all I'm going to ask is that you'll reflect on the historical pieces as I present this last chapter to you, and if there's anything that you take from it beyond that, then that is completely up to your interpretation. So this last chapter, chapter 13, is called The Fred Spirit. And there's a quote that starts off the chapter, and it says, "At the day of judgment, we shall not be asked what we have read, but what we have done." And that comes from Thomas A. Kempis. The Fred Factor is based on an extraordinary postal carrier. Think of it as Fred's story. Of course, the spirit he exemplified has been present in men, women, and children throughout history. Some have achieved public acclaim, and others, they were lost in history because they did their work quietly and were relatively obscure. Over the centuries, the names, places, and circumstances have changed, but the principles have remained the same. Being a carpenter in the Middle East 2,000 years ago was a humble way to make a living. Oddly enough, the greatest person in history spent the early part of his life doing just that. Little is recorded of this carpenter's childhood, except that at an early age he showed an intense interest in the teachings of religious scholars, and he gave evidence of unusual wisdom in such a young man. Who could have predicted the astounding impact that he would make on the course of history? After all, up to this point, he didn't live a particularly noteworthy life. He never reached the age of 40, he wasn't a political leader, or an earthly ruler, or the head of a powerful organization. Often, his actions brought on the ire of the authorities of the day. He surrounded himself with a group of 12 committed followers, and as an adult, he devoted himself to enriching the lives of others. His work was so amazing, and the impact on people came in contact with was so profound that he was known as a miracle worker. Unlike the religious leaders of the day, this man had a heart for people, and he built relationships of exceeding depth and affection. Life wasn't a set of rules designed to keep people in their places, but rather a relationship with the Creator who enabled people to be all that they were meant to be. To use the vocabulary of this book, you might say that he reinvented himself when he went from obscure labor as a carpenter into a brief but very public stint of service that attracted throngs. But I'd prefer to say that he was simply living completely and fully the life that his Father had put him on this earth to live. At one point, this man, who I'm sure that you recognize as Jesus, was asked who would be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. His answer has bridged the ages. From antiquity to the future beyond, the years in which we now live, Jesus said simply, "The greatest among you will be a servant." Whom do we remember? We remember those who, like Jesus, lived to serve others. We are most impressed and affected not by what people gain, but by what they give. Not by what they conquer, but by what they contribute. And we recognize in every Fred, the postman of history, a common spirit and purpose that was modeled most effectively and most completely in the life of the Nazarene named Jesus. For the love of Fred. It was the first day of pre-K kindergarten, and I was walking with my son Hunter into the building. As we approached, he asked, "Dad, what's the most important thing of all?" I was impressed that my 5-year-old was this insightful to ask advice about how to do well in school. I thought for a moment and started to answer with some ideas about obeying the teachers, learning as much as you can, and playing well with the other children. Before I could finish, Hunter interrupted. "Dad," he strung the word out with a hint of exasperation, "the most important thing of all is love." It stopped me in my tracks. Dad hadn't quite gotten it. Hunter was asking for simple advice, but he was thinking profound thoughts. And out of the mouth of this child came insight for the ages. If you were to ask me what the most important thing about the Fred Factor is, I'd have to answer it the same way. The most important thing is love. Not necessarily a sugary, let's all sing, we are the world kind of love, but a stable, meaningful kind of love that enables us to do things for others, those we know and those we don't know, because at a base level, we choose to love. I learned a long time ago that there's a big difference between liking people and loving them. The Bible instructed us to love others, even our enemies. I sure don't like my enemies, but I'm supposed to love them. Liking someone is an emotional response. It is a feeling. When someone says, "I like her," or he or she can always finish the sentence if they asked, "I like her because," or "I like him because." The tough part is that we can't control our emotions. We can control how we choose to express these emotions, but not the feelings themselves. A healthy person can be angry and still choose to act lovingly. A sad person can choose to do things that need to be done at the moment, not because of how he or she feels, but in spite of it. A feeling is a reaction. Maybe that's one reason why it was saying to like your enemies. He had insight into the human psyche. He knew that liking or not liking someone was always in the immediate control. I've learned that love, among other things, is an action. I can love someone that I don't necessarily like. I can do something or act toward a person in a certain way because I know it is right, and I don't have to have a warm or fuzzy feeling doing it. So here's my working definition of love. Love is the commitment to treat a person with dignity and kindness, regardless of how you feel about him or her. It is much easier to love lovable people. Just about anybody can do that. But to love the unlovable, those people of poor behavior or negative circumstances, is a tough challenge of life. Mother Teresa loved the lepers and the people and the downcast of the world, and we consider her a saint. Jesus loved the sinner just as much as he loved the religious people of the day. He hung out with sinners, attended to their needs, and loved them without ever compromising his own integrity. Marva Collins sticks in my mind as a woman who truly loved her students. Years ago, she started a program in Chicago on the West Side Prep and vowed that she would not let her students fail. Do you think any of those students ever frustrated or angered her? Of course they did, but she loved them anyways. My wife Darla loves me even when she doesn't like me. And as rare as that may be, when I don't have warm fuzzy feelings for her, I still love her. We love our two boys completely, even when we don't like their behavior. The more you love others, do those things that treat them with dignity, that serve and enrich their lives, the easier it is to like them. People become more lovable when they are loved. Most of this book has been about what and how of the Fred factor. But if you don't understand the why, you'll get tired on the journey. It is the why behind the Fred factor that will sustain and guide you, even on those days when the feelings of like are at a low tide. Fred the Postman loves people. He loves his customers, he loves his coworkers, and it shows. He does his extraordinary job each day with love, and his work becomes extraordinary. This book is a short history of a particular Fred and one who delivered my mail and became my friend. But the history of my life, as much as it has positively been affected by Fred the Postman, is inevitably imprinted with the mark of another one. And I believe this to be true of Jesus and the Bible. There have been many Freds in history, but there has always and will only be the one and only Jesus. What makes any act extraordinary is doing it with love. What makes any life extraordinary is living it with love. And that is the secret of the Fred factor. And that ends our book on the Fred factor. So what I would like for you to focus on from this chapter is the issue of love. And if you love what you do and you love those that you serve, then your work will be extraordinary. And so I hope that you'll continue to keep that as your focus and go forward and complete your prompt for this week, as well as your choice board option. And I also hope that you'll have an awesome summer. I look forward to the fall and hopefully getting to see all of you face to face. And if you've not yet completed your enrollment papers for next year's classes, I hope that you'll consider taking Applied Business Development. Again, if you have any questions or any concerns, please reach out to me. You have my email, you have my Google Voice number. Feel free to call or text. And have a great week. But more importantly, have an awesome summer. Peace out.